Welcome everyone. This is our 41st Story Cellars wine session, previously called Love in a Time of Corona. And we've had quite a few lovely people through here, lots of stories, different perspectives, different philosophies. And I can honestly say from its beginnings, when this was really a release for people during the time of Corona, that it's now morphed into, for me, something bigger. There's a lot of more people joining. I'm getting a lot more questions about Story Cellars, and there's a lot of stuff under the guise of what I do in wine coming from this. Also to mention the app Artisan, which will hopefully be released soon. And so the purpose of this really is to get to, it's not about necessarily trying to understand the details within the wine. We're not looking for whether the raspberries from the left bank or the right bank, but what we're trying to understand is the stories behind the people involved, the stories behind the winemakers, sometimes the property owners. And so it's about storytelling and the stories behind the labels and stories behind the names and philosophies and that kind of stuff. So for this one, we've got Ian Naude. Now, Ian Naude he's like the godfather of winemaking, I think. I only met Ian this year, actually, at a Shannon taste. But I'd met him previously through his Cinsault, where we had a tasting of Cinsault. And amongst us mere mortals and with our limited tasting capabilities, put his Cinsault as the best out of the bunch. And there was quite a lot there. And if you think of Ian Naude, you'll think, there's few winemakers in South Africa. I think Ian's been harvesting grapes and making wine for over 30 years. But there are few that were challenging the norm in South Africa before the likes of the Swartland and the cowboys in the Swartland, and before dirty wines and non-filtered wines and using all these new things. So Ian's been pushing those boundaries, and he's been able to do that because he's worked in so many different countries, understanding his trade. And I think that Ian, well, I believe Ian's a contrarian. He doesn't like to go with the flow. So we're going to start with him to tell us why he's a contrarian. Ian, you find yourself sitting here talking to us about your life story in wine. You were at school one day, and then suddenly you're now 30 years into wine. How did it all begin?
Wow, yeah. Thanks, Harry. It was great meeting you that night, and I've honestly heard so much about you, and then at last met you. And thanks for organizing this. Grew up in Durbanville, always been, and I must be honest, here in Stellenbosch, English is not our second language. I think it's about the fourth. I don't know what's the second or third, but so I need some wine just to keep it rolling most of the time to get it going. But luckily, I know people in the southern suburbs would understand Afrikaans as well. Yeah, I grew up in Durbanville and on a dairy farm where there was grapes. And the grapes went to Cellars in Paul. And it was one of those jobs that you knew quite a few ooms who did this job. But it was almost a factory thing. It was you knew that almost a winemaker, that guy did this guy did this. It was never one of my plans to do anything with wine. And growing up on the farm, a dairy farm, and animals is my big thing in life. Animals is 100% everything. And I knew I wanted to do something with animals. So I went to Elsenburg, I went to the army, all the normal things. And then I went to Elsenburg to study farming. And in my second year, one of my subjects, we had to choose subjects, and one was, I can't remember what, and one was winemaking, or not winemaking, but more the viticulture side. And I thought, you know what, this could actually work. My dad's got a farm with grapes on it. We don't know really what is all of the grapes, but what's happening. And I thought, you know what, I actually would like to know more of this. And then the second year ended, and I thought, I must be honest, I'm not ready to go to the farm. I'm too young. I'm enjoying Stellenbosch way too much. And I think I should do a third year. And the only third year at that stage I could do was winemaking. And I thought, you know what? Then it's winemaking. What I enjoy is whenever people ask me, And I think tonight people would also understand, as I think you summed it up very well. I don't like to do the norm, and I get really bored with a lot of things. And I hate doing things because we have to do that things. And I think if I look back now, as I said, a lot of people would always ask me, so since when did you want to become a winemaker, and did you have this dream and everything? No, not one of those. And I often think when a job chooses you and you not the job, it's something that you don't understand in the beginning, but later you go, wow, okay, I understand it now. And if I could choose it, I would do it again. But there was never a day that I thought I wanted to be a winemaker. Literally, it was because I wanted to do another year at Stellenbosch and not go to the farm immediately. And then when I started this winemaking thing, it was really interesting. I mean, it was early 90s. And we were still quite, things were happening. And I always say it was the most interesting thing. You had a winemaking path. It was, you became an assistant. No, you harvest at a winery. Then you become assistant winemaker. Then you become the winemaker after a few years. And then you become the cellar master, kellermeester. I still don't know what that is. And then you do that for a few years. And then you get a golden watch and you retire and you die. And I thought, no, there must be more to wine than this. I can't do this part. And it was interesting, even Sadi and myself were the first two who kind of moved away from this. He was about 3 years behind me. And we met up and we started talking. And I was one of the first guys who thought I would really like to go and see the rest of the world. But at that stage, we were still apart the years and we couldn't really travel, and a lot of things were happening. And you were working in different wineries across the world for free, literally for free. But I thought my ticket out of here is winemaking, and I would work at Cellars. And then this almost became a lifestyle. I think you look at surfers and you see how they do the circuit around the world. At that stage, winemaking was like that. Even myself, even went to the old world more, and I went to the new world more. I went to America, and then I went to Germany and France and Italy and Israel and America again. And for 10 years, I did 2 harvests a year. And it was one of those things, as I said, I never decided I want to be a winemaker. And 10 years later, it's like, oh, okay, I suppose this is what I'm going to do then. And then I knew I wanted to come back. I really, really thought I wanted to come back. And I had enough of being a cellar rat in wineries all over the world. And then the best thing, or we joke about it now, in those years it wasn't funny. Even myself were the first two who really moved away, and people were frowning on us. They were like, wow, these 2 kids are weird. Why don't you just get a permanent job at a co-op, become the winemaker, assistant winemaker, blah, blah, and then work your way up to cellar master? And it's like, no, this is not what we want to do. And then usually we would work abroad for 6 months or something, or a year, and then we would come back. And I think that's, somebody asked me the other day, how many harvests have you done? And I said, I don't know, because I work sometimes 2 to 3 harvests a year. I would travel to countries and do 2, 3, which is a stupid thing. There's a reason why you only do 1 harvest a year. But now looking back, it was interesting. And what was interesting at that stage is we would come back. And now you have to understand, you worked in a winery in France or in Italy or in America, in Napa, and you came back and you've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, and you get a harvest position here just to work here to get money to go overseas again. And you would tell the cellar master, keller oom, you know what, the way you make this is not maybe the correct way. In France, they do this and this and this. And then he would say, you know what, after cleaning the tanks, you fired, by the way. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm fired again. Then I would phone Eben and he says, don't worry, I'm also fired. And he's like, okay, what are we doing now? So we were fired. We actually said we want to do a tasting now for the first time in 25 years, we're going to do a tasting together, charity thing. But we first have to find out how many times we both have been fired. And as I said, we were literally the joke. And what was really good is Eben actually took more of the flack, because he was the crazy one who went to Swartland and I stayed in Stellenbosch. So he was the weirder one of the two. And I look at him now, I mean, yeah, it's interesting because quite a few people said to us, you should never be winemakers. You can't stay in one place for longer than 6 months. And we're like, no, we would love to. We get fired every time. So, I mean, it's not that we don't want to stay there, it's we get fired. And then Eben would get me a job where he worked and I would get him a job where he worked. And then what was good, Adi came on board and yeah, a couple of others. And then we were like this group, and this weird group became a little bit bigger. And then we just found our ways. And it was one of those things, as I said, and answering your thing, yeah, I was at school and then a winemaker. There was never a big thing. It's always interesting, the Elsenburg students, I helped there a lot with the winemaking students, and they would call me and say they in Portugal, and they in a winery where they, the 24th generation making wine. And you're like, wow, okay. I never had that. I just was born and raised on a dairy farm. It's my background. So for me, it was, as I said again, if I can choose, I think this would be the job that I chose, but it was never a job that I thought, this is where I'm heading.
Yeah, so you, I don't even know if you know, 30 years you've been making wine. A lot.
Is it 30?
I don't know. I read it on your website. I don't know who writes it.
Hanley works it out. The girl who works here, she said the other day, I thought it was 25. Oh, I'm sticking to 25. 25 sounds better than 30. But it could be 30.
Evans made 30, you made 25. Yeah.
Okay, then I'm closer to 30.
Yeah. So you know, being contrarian, speaking about Eben, I did see something about you. I mentioned it to you earlier, pushing trucks up hills. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. How do you explain this in English? Eben and myself sat down and we would do certain, we would break the norm, not because we wanted to, because we just got bored with the same things. And we thought South Africa could offer so much more than what we were seeing and were supposed to do. And I'll get back to that. And then I made the white blend, the one you tasted tonight. And that stage, and I'll explain the white blend in a minute. At that stage, okay, let's go with the it's easier. When I came back to South Africa, and I knew this is where I wanted to stay, this is where I want to live, this is where I want to make wine. I think the country has got a great potential. People just don't know about it yet. And we've been making wine for 370 odd years, and suddenly the gates opened for us and the world started coming into South Africa. And I always said the worst thing for me was you had to, I worked for people then, and they would come, they would send Marks and Spencer, Tesco, Sainsbury, they would say, send somebody to come and buy some wine. But it would be somebody that you look at and go, okay, so what's your wine background? And they would go, you know what, I worked in the makeup department in Marks and Spencer, but now I'm the wine buyer. And so yeah, I can see that. And it's like, I don't know why they send you here. It's like, I was told I have to buy wines that is very fashionable right now, and that would be Chardonnay that tastes like America. It's like, you know, you're on the wrong continent, number one. Secondly, why we want to do that. And then the next one would come and say, you know what, Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand is very popular now. You have to make us a wine that tastes like a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. And it's again, you're on the wrong continent again. And why? We play rugby against each other. Why would I want to make a wine that tastes like a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc? But we work for people, and you had to do these things. And it was sad because we had to copy the whole time. We never had the privilege almost to make something exciting or show South Africa. But then even myself and Adi, and we were coupled. When we got fired, we would get back together and find our new jobs and things. And we would sit and say, but what is South African wine? And for me, it is a really interesting thing, because at that stage, for me, London is the hub of the wine world. Everything that happens in the UK, London-based. All the wine writers are, the influencers there, the buyers are there, the top people are there. And trend starts in the UK and then kind of works the way around the world. And I would go to wine shops when I traveled in London, in high-end wine shops in high streets. And I would go and sit there, and I could never figure out, because you had Australia, Chile, Argentina, France. Okay, France had a bloody whole wall, because it's Bordeaux, Burgundy, Chablis, blah, blah, blah. And then you would have the rest of the world. And I would always ask people at that stage, do you have South African wine? And they go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Right there at the back, at the bottom shelf, there should be 2 bottles, the ones with dust on them. One is a big one, the other one is 3 oceans. And you're like, oh, we've got a long way to go. Oh, we've got a long way to go. And then you would ask people, I would sit in the shops and I could never figure out, because if you go here to Pick and Pay, there wasn't Tops at that stage. It's Franschhoek, Stellenbosch, Malmesbury, whatever areas. There you've got the whole world in a small shop. Cultivars, icon wines, price points. And I would always ask people, watch people if they come in, how are you going to decide which wine do you want to buy? And then the interesting thing was, people would go straight for Chablis. And I would walk to the person and say, sorry, I'm a winemaker from South Africa. I just want to find out, you had this choice of all these wines. Why did you go straight for Chablis? And I would say, is it because you like Chardonnay? And they go, no, we hate Chardonnay. It's like, oh, okay. It's 100% Chardonnay. Okay, enjoy the wine, enjoy the wine. I'm not going to say anything. And I realized there for the first time, which was brilliant, I realized that people don't care. They like a style, they like a name, they like a certain wine that they're comfortable with. And they don't care because Chablis is 100% Chardonnay. They don't care if it's Chardonnay. They don't care if Chablis is a town or a person or a horse or a car or whatever. They know they like Chablis. And I came back to South Africa and I sat with Evan and all of them, and we said, what is South Africa? Why would people walk into a shop in the UK and say, how do they say, I want a bottle of South African wine? What is that? I mean, in France, you had Burgundy, Bordeaux, Chablis, Cinsault, we can carry on. So you would never go into a wine shop and say, can I get a bottle of French wine? I mean, no, which one do you want? And then I realized for the first time, but it's because we always copied and never did our own thing. And what was brilliant is we sat down one night and we decided, okay, many bottles of wine, long hours. We decided the only thing we can offer the world is a blend of terroirs. We can't do something where yeah, we can do a phenomenal Chenin Blanc, but then we're competing. We can do a fantastic Chardonnay, we complete. What we decided then, why don't we buy in grapes? And we were one of the first guys who decided, why don't we break away from the system, the estate wine, the co-op wine, the thing, and rather work with 300 years of farmers' experience and making farming grapes that we can buy and then make some interesting wines. And the best I can explain that is, if you go to Wellington and you buy the same vine, 10 stockies, and you would plant, say, a Chardonnay clone 101. You would plant one in Wellington, one in Stellenbosch, one in Durbanville, one in your areas, one in Hermanus, one in Swartland. 5 years later, when you harvest that same vine, it's going to taste completely different because of terroir, because of the area where it stands, because of the soil, because of the sunlight, because of the rainfall, for all these things. And I thought, how phenomenal is this? Why don't we offer the world? Because nobody can do this, really. I mean, I don't know of any countries, and we've tried, asked quite a lot. You can't blend Bordeaux and Burgundy and Cinsault. You can't blend that. But in South Africa, we can blend any terroir together. So we thought, why don't we rather do that? Why don't we just get the same cultivar and buy it from different farmers, top-end farmers, and blend it together and just call it a Chenin Blanc from South Africa. But what I did at that stage, I did a Sauvignon Blanc, and I called it the 5 regions Sauvignon Blanc. And the sommeliers in the UK loved it because it was a nice story. Where on the back, where people would put Merlot 20%, Cabernet 5%, Shiraz 20%, I put Durbanville 15%, Stellenbosch 20%, Elim 18%, blah, blah, blah. And I would build this wine almost of a wine that nobody else could do. Then going back to your question is, we decided, why don't we make a white blend from South Africa? We think white blends is the way to go. Now, this is 25 years ago. We're young, we come back from overseas, we get fired everywhere, but we are going to put white blends on the map. The worst thing at that stage is, number one, white blends was not something. White blends, the only white blend there was Grassa. And people knew that. So people were like, so you're going to make a Grassa for us? No, we're going to make a top-end wine. Yeah, right. Second thing, I wanted my wines to age. We always joke and said at that stage, when Joburg comes down to Cape Town, they want vintage 2025. They don't want anything less. I mean, it still has to be pretty much on the vine. Anything that was a year or two old, they didn't want to drink because they said they did not understand. They were like, but is this wine fraught? Why couldn't you sell it? And it's like, no, it's 2 years old. So what I did. And then the third thing, I mean, I can't still believe how stupid I was at that stage. I wanted a screw cap on this wine. As I said, Grassa 100%. So 3 things for me, and 3 things was worst decision, even worse decision, and worst decision was that 3. But we stuck to it and we thought, no, we're going to make white blends trendy. So we started making these white blends and even made a more Mediterranean style, where we would use Viognier, Chenin Blanc, Massan, and things like that. I would go for very clinical Bordeaux style blends, but I did a Chenin Blanc, Semillon, Sauvignon, and that's the first wine that you got there tonight. What I did was sorry, huh?
The white blend.
Yeah, the white blend. So what I did was I decided I'm going to make a Chablis style wine that people love so much in England because everybody goes straight in, they want a Chablis. And I wanted to copy that style of wine without using Chardonnay, because then it's just cheap Chablis again. So what I did is I went to about, I don't know many at that stage. I worked with about 25 farmers in a 400-kilometer radius, where I would buy Chenin Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, and Semillon. So my Naude white blend will always, always, always be that 3 cultivars, never something different. But the beauty of it was there could be up to 25 vineyards in that bottle, because I would buy Chenin Blanc from different terroirs. I would buy Sauvignon Blanc, the grapes from different terroirs, and then Semillon from different terroirs. And I would ferment them all separate. What I wanted to do was to showcase to the world that we can do something that no one else of you could do. You can blend all these terroirs together. And I'm not doing a blend where people would go, oh, but this is typical Bordeaux, because it's not. It's not an Aussie blend. It's not even a South African blend. So it's my blend. And what I did was I would ferment all these things separate. And not from day one, but pretty much is I would try to do everything as natural as possible. I hate manipulating things. For me, the biggest thing is to work in a vineyard and to start to understand the vineyard, to understand the terroir, to understand everything about that area that I want to showcase, and not make a commercial wine, which was also very difficult at that stage. So what I did was I started aging these wines. I bottled them in a year, and then I would leave them for 5-6 years. And the one you're tasting tonight is a 2010. I mean, that is what, 12 years old. Screw cap, white blend from South Africa. And what was interesting is when I started selling these wines, I started selling 06. I started selling in about 20, I would say 2010, no, 2012. I started selling that, and I couldn't give this wine away for free. people would look at the bottle and they would look literally in shock at me and go, screw cap, and it's 6 years old. And I go, yes, try it. And they go, no, thank you. Then I realized I had to change this. I had to do this in a blind tasting, where I give it to people and I would ask them, how old do you think this wine is? And then people would say 2, 3 years old. And it's like, yes. And then I would pull the bottle. I would say, so is this one of your favorite? Would you buy this one? And pretty much all the hands goes up. And I say, pull it out. And I say, this is a 2006 and we're in 2012 now. And then half of the hands goes down. And they go, no, we don't drink old wines from South Africa. Then luckily, this wine got to the UK and started hitting quite a few Michelin star restaurants. And then suddenly people wanted it. And that's the answer where you started. Eben said, because 010 is my last one. I stopped in 010 because the beauty was every year the vintage would be very dominant in the wine. So I made 06, 07, 08, 09, 010. So 5 vintages of the white blend. 010 was my last one. But some years you would look on the back of the bottle and you would see Chenin Blanc is the biggest component, then Semillon, then Sauvignon Blanc. The next year it could be Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc. So when I blend, I don't blend with a thing in mind that I have to create something. I had a winery full of wine fermenting. I always say to people, if there was Tupperware, something would be fermenting in there, because I had all these different ways of, let's experiment with this, maybe we should do this with this, do with that, and I always tried never to put yeast in there, because I always felt wine should be something that showcases the terroir and not your style. My style comes in by blending and creating something. So you would see the bottle has got 3 circles on there. For me, blending is perfection, where everything comes together. And it's the 3 cultivars that becomes one. So, and if you feel on the bottle, you would see there's like a roughness on it. To me, that was, and it wasn't me, it was the guy who did the labels, who was brilliant. It was when you turn a vine leaf over, the veins on the back. For me, that's that. It's the veins of that terroir that's in the bottle. And from year to year, it could be literally, I think the fewest vineyards was about 15, 16 vineyards, and the most was about 25 blended into this bottle. Sure. And sommeliers abroad loved this, and they loved it that it was age, and it was, I mean, this wine is 12 years old and it's still a baby. It's still a baby. This one can go at least another 10 years without a bleep. And it's a screw cap. So usually people would ask me, so what do you think about screw cap? I'm not even going to answer that word, because the proof is there in the bottle. It's perfect. And then suddenly things started happening, and 2010, I couldn't do this anymore, because nobody believed in it. Nobody wanted to buy it. Everybody was like, this is a joke. It's too old. We don't want to drink this wine. Why do we want a white blend? Blah, 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 the whole thing. And then Eben and myself said one, and he said, and in the Afrikaans, it's a lot more ruder than in English. And he said, if you push a truck uphill for too long, and it doesn't tip and free run on the other side, it's going to run back and kill you. So you have to get away. And that was 2010. He said that to me, and I looked at him and I said, you're right. So I've been pushing this truck for the white blend too far. It doesn't want to tip. It doesn't want to go to the other side, and it's going to kill me. So that was my last vintage. And it was actually a good thing and a sad thing. Would I do it again? No, never. I've been there. I've got the T-shirt. I love it because this wine is, all over the world in really, really good restaurants and Michelin stars. In South Africa, and a lot of the top restaurants, it's on the tasting menu. Chefs loves it in the top restaurant because they say the wine is so diverse. It's got so many layers to it, because when it opens up, there's 15 to 25 vineyards in there. It just gives you a lot more. It showcases more. It's still young. It's fresh. I never wanted to add things to my wine. That's why my wines age so well. I don't want to put acidity in there. I don't want to put any chemicals in there. And it was never because I wanted to be green or organic or vegan. I don't know what the fancy words is right now. I just wanted to work as clean as possible. And I just wanted to showcase the vineyards and not manipulation of trying to do something that tastes like something else.
That's amazing. So, you know, I read that story about the Sauvignon Blanc, because even now in South Africa, you'll have winemakers that are making really, really, really good Sauvignon Blanc, but they'll be getting the grapes from their estate or from their region at least. And you were back then already making a Sauvignon Blanc from different regions, which I guess not just a co-op blend, but top-end sites, carefully thought out so that you know that this is going to provide this layer to the wine, and this is going to provide this layer and this acidity and alcohol and mouthfeel and different fruits. So you get a complex wine, and you get something which, as you said, is South African. Even though the grape isn't South African, it's South African. Although we drink more Sauvignon Blanc in South Africa than any other white wine.
It's going to change. It's going to change one day soon.
Keep pushing that truck up the hill.
No, I can't. It's killing me. Yeah, but you know what's interesting is there was time for everything, and I've never been one who wants to be in the limelight or anything. And for me, it was always about the job. And that's why, I mean, and I'm very controversial when I say that, but I respect other winemakers when they do that. I hate competitions and I hate writing for these things, because I mean, if I'm trying to showcase you, I always say, we're going to taste old wines now. If you're in South Africa and you were standing on the same field in Swartland, where it gets 45 degrees Celsius, and in winter it's a lot of rain and it's muddy, and you can survive the heat and the wind and the droughts and the drunk tractor drivers and everything. You've got your own story to tell. Why is it about me? Why is it about a golden sticker where somebody has tasted this and say this is a brilliant one? You don't understand the story, so how can you say? And you know what? Sometimes a wine isn't that brilliant, but it showcases the diversity of that terroir, incredible, and it captures everything right there. That thing needs a sticker. And the thing is, for me, it's I'm the lucky winemaker at the end who gets it in an air conditioning winery. I'm not there when it's 40 degrees Celsius and I have to work in the vineyard. And I'm not there when it's -2 and the wind's blowing. The farmers should get that stickers. I'm just the one who can understand. And I think the biggest compliment for me was a while ago when a wine writer from the UK said something. He said, what I enjoy about the Naude wines, I've never been to South Africa, but when I taste the wines, I can see myself sitting there, and what a beautiful thing it is. It's like Ian Naude is holding up a mirror to nature. Amazing. And I thought, you know what, I can retire now. I've got it. If people taste this, I'm all right. I'm all right. And for me, it is really, really trying to understand the vineyard, to understand the area, to understand the terroir, to understand everything, and not trying to be a rock star in the wine industry, because there's too many rock stars. There's too many, and you know what, a rock star is something which, I mean, you're in a phase and then the phase goes over, and then they try to find new rock stars. And I would rather want to be something where people understand my wine, and they can sit and they don't even have to know it's me. They would sit there and go, wow, what a phenomenal white blend from South Africa. Yes, look at the diversity of all these things. Then I've done my job. It's not for me about little stickers and awards and things. I've never been there, never will do it. But good for the other guys who wants to do it and who wants their bottle to look like a Christmas tree.
If you were about the stickers, you might not be able to see your bottles because...
Yeah, that's true.
But you know, so for me, obviously, we've got this. It's called Story Cellars. For me, it's all about the story. And it's actually, for me, more important that people understand the story. And when they drink the wine, they understand the story of the people, the place, and all of that, which is slightly different to your view, because you're trying to capture the story of the location, the soil, of the wind, of the climate, of the everything in the bottle. And for those people who can taste, they can definitely get a sense of I mean, they've tasted many wines, to get a sense of what's in the bottle and where these grapes came from. And you can't get that in a co-op, and you can't get that when you start loading wines with Vin 7, these commercial yeasts and stuff, because that will take the heart of the wine, which is expressing to you exactly what happened that year with in terms of climate and rain and soil, and it's saying to you, this is what I am. And then you throw in a commercial yeast which just dominates and creates its own profile anywhere over that. So it puts a mask on the wine, and it makes that wine like 90% of the other wines.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, the young people, I learn a lot from them. I think South Africa has been, we came from the underdog, and 25 years later in the UK, we've got our own shelves now, we've got our own things. And luckily, white blends is the biggest thing from South Africa, selling from anything, from any price point. But you go into a place like Hanford's, and you sit there and you look at the shelf, and you want to explode of pride, because you see wines from South Africa, white blends especially, selling from anything from 25 pounds to 100 pounds, and it sells out. And you go, wow, okay, so we're not in the back in the corner anymore. This is actually work. And I think what's good is a lot of these young guys has come out, and they're fearless. The wines are phenomenal. And we have to be reinventing ourselves in a way, but in a beautiful way, where we're more almost getting back in South Africa, the serious winemakers going back, saying, you know what, I want to do less. I want to be, and this is a beautiful word, I want to be more site specific than making a commercial style wine. I want people, because people now travel a lot of people has been to South Africa, they love the wines, they love South Africa. People can taste the wine and go, wow, this is a brilliant Chenin Blanc from Swartland. I can taste it. Yes, because they're true to the soil there, to the terroir. They can say, wow, this is a phenomenal Chenin Blanc from Elgin, or from Hermanus, or Hemel en Aarde Valley. And I think that's the thing where we should be going. And I could never understand, yes, if you make commercial wine, it's something completely different. Why, if nature gave you the perfect yeast in the grapes? And I always say to the students, 2,000 years ago, when they made wine in Egypt, there was no rep selling around, walking around trying to sell Vin 7 to you. It was, this is it. This is what the grape is. So why do we want to change these things? And why don't we just respect the vineyard more and understand the vineyard and understand when to pick? Because that's the big thing of my wines, 100%. My biggest thing of winemaking, and when I talk to the students as well, is get out of the winery, because it's really interesting to sit in a winery when it's 42 and phoning the farmer and say, when the sugar levels is here and the acid is here and the pH is there, pick. You know what, 20 bulling in Swartland and 20 bulling in Elgin for the same grape is two complete different things. So respect the terroir. So I go around and I taste grapes. I taste thousands and thousands, and I drive like a crazy person between these vineyards to understand them. Because every vineyard is giving you, I always say, a 3-day window when it shows its perfection, when everything comes together. But it's not at the same time every year, because last year was a drought. The year before there was floods. The year before it was late buttoning season. So you have to be in that vineyard to understand. And the thing is, you can't say to that vineyard, hang on, I'm not ready to pick you in the next 3 days, because when you pick it too early, you're going to get a dysfunctional one. When you pick it too late, you're going to get a flabby, lifeless one. So you have to be in that vineyard to understand it's going to be in about a 10-day or a week or 2 weeks still. And then that week before, you have to be there pretty much every second day to know it's the time to pick. Because when I capture that and all those things comes together, then I can put that in a bottle. That's my job. Because then you're going to be site specific. Then you're going to be saying, this is my wine from this area. And it really pisses me off when people start, but we put all these chemicals in the wine. Why? Why would you do that? Because then you don't respect anything. It's you making commercial wines.
Sure. Listen, so I want to talk about Oupa Willem, and I want to talk about the story of Oupa Willem. Before we get there, though, you look at your varieties. I know you've done Palomino before. Well, I think you've done Palomino before. You call it something else.
Malvasia Ray, because that's the correct name for it. And I really got tired of people asking me, because I'm an animal person, Palomino, but isn't that a horse? And it's like, yes, but it's a grape as well. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to cut this thing, and we're going to go back to the origin. Malvasia Ray is the name.
So Palomino is a grape that's known for sherry-style wines. We in South Africa, we've got Colombard, and Colombard we use, I think, for sherry, but we also use it for brandy and stuff. It's a drought-resistant, very mass-produced grape, but it's not used for single variety wines because South Africa regards it as it doesn't have flavor profile, doesn't have all of this stuff. Yet you've made this Langpad, and you can tell us what Langpad means. Old vines. I'm sure the Langpad is you pushing up the truck up the hill again, but this is an old vine, because all our Colombard, or most of our Colombards, are old vine, and it's a single variety. And I don't know many people who are making a single variety Colombard besides co-ops and stuff. And it's got 5-star platters, and it was in the top 50 best white wines in decanter, so in the world. Now tell me what. You've got to be quite contrarian to say, I'm going to now make a single variety Colombard.
Quite contrarian or just stupid. I mean, one of the two. You can decide. You know what is I got to a point in my life where I got really, really tired of making Chenin Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, blah, blah, blah. What are you going to do to a Sauvignon Blanc that you stand out of 5,000 other ones on the shelf? And I got to a point where I really thought, I really want to do different cultivars. And this is a really nice story, actually. I love the Greek islands. We go there quite a lot. And I always tasted the Assyrtiko on the Greek islands. And I can't drink them. I always say to Karen, we can only brush our teeth with this, because, I mean, your smile looks perfect after that. It's undrinkable, but well, we're on the Greek island, so let's drink some Assyrtiko. And the thing is, I always thought, wow, I'm sure this grape has got more to it. So I came back to South Africa, and I thought, I'm going to plant Assyrtiko in South Africa. This is the new thing for me. Nobody else is doing this. And I spoke to Rosa and the whole thing, and we started working on Assyrtiko. And then I always say it's a very difficult thing to explain. I don't look for vineyards and things. They find me. And it's usually the underdogs. And I think I must learn something from that. Or it's the grape variety that nobody else wants to work with. It comes to me. So what was interesting is in 2018, I started with this, before that we started with this Assyrtiko thing. And I've got a really big friend, Janus, who's a winemaker who owns a big winery in Santorini, and he makes a phenomenal Assyrtiko, one of the best Assyrtikos, the best Assyrtiko I've ever tasted. And I'm bringing in some, it's on the water. Hopefully in a month's time, I get 50 cases of his Assyrtiko. And what is brilliant is I started looking at new things, and I couldn't find new things. And then I helped a young kid who makes a phenomenal wine. This kid is unbelievable. Revenge of the Crayfish. I don't know if you ever heard of the wine, but this kid became a rock star in 24 hours. And he brought me this wine to taste, and I introduced him to Greg, and then all of this happened. And I said to him, because he comes from, the grapes comes from Koekenap, and I never knew there was a town called Koekenap. I thought that was a joke. I mean, I thought if you said something stupid about somebody, you said, are you from Koekenap? I mean, I did not know there was a town called that. So he said, the grapes comes from Koekenap. And I said, no, be serious now. Where does the grapes come from? And he said, well, really, it comes from... And I said, show it on a map. I didn't know it was just outside of Vredendal. And I tasted this, and I was blown away. I could not believe what this kid has done with Chenin Blanc. And this wine is incredible. And Greg, I mean, I gave it a bottle to Greg Sherwood in London, and he rated it in 96, which, I mean, never, ever happens. And the wine was literally sold out in 24 hours, but there was just 2 barrels. And then I said to him, listen, what other grapes do you have up in Vredendal? Because I can't believe this comes from there. And he started saying all these grapes, and he gets to Colombard and he says, there's a really nice vineyard of Colombard. And I said, no, not interested. So I went up there and I saw this vineyard and I thought, wow, unbelievable. But nobody's going to drink Colombard in South Africa. I can use it maybe in a blend or something. I have to get this grape. Now, 3 steps back, when I stopped 2010 with old vintages and blends, I went straight over to old vines. And Rosa Creer was the rock star who started this whole old vine thing, and it was brilliant. It was what she did. I mean, she changed South African winemaking incredibly. And she would call me and Eben and the millennials and people like that and say, I've got a vineyard for you. You have to come and taste it. Now, old vines in South Africa has to be 35 years and older, the vineyards. And we've got these beautiful vineyards. I made a Rooi Groen drive from Frans Hoek 2 years ago, which was 90 something years old. And I mean, I was just stunned. I mean, 90 years, your grandfather's grandfather did this. And I thought, how beautiful is this for terroir? And it's this beautiful vineyard that your grandfather's dad, Oupa Willem planted this. And he had this dream for this wine. And here we can do a phenomenal wine in a bottle and respect this guy's vision. And then I went up there and he said Colombard, and I tasted some things and I thought, wow, I thought Colombard was this blending, horrible grape thing, because this is what you taste most of the time. It's mostly over-extracted, it's guava-ish, it's too big, it dominates, or it's too green, it's just acidity. And then I tasted this and I thought, wow, no, I have to do something with this. But I knew nobody in South Africa was going to buy serious old vine Colombard. So what I did is I got the grapes and I made it. And while it was fermenting, I was just stunned. I could not believe what I'm tasting. And it's like, no, this is weird. This is weird. Now I also have to say it's about as the crow flies, 12 kilometers from the cold ocean on the west coast. So every night, and I've seen it now this year for the first time, I was there during harvest, the mist comes in every afternoon, this big cloud of mist, and you're in 40 something degrees sweating outside, and then suddenly this big cloud just comes and it's dark, and it's like, okay, is there aliens coming now? What's going to happen? Are there pirates coming? And you sit there, you see this, and then in the morning, 8 o'clock, it's 40 degrees, and then the sun burns away this mist, and the saltiness of this mist stays behind in the vineyard. And this is what you taste in this wine, which is just incredible, because I could never figure out why would you want Vredendal 45 degrees Celsius wine. And then you taste this and it's something completely different. I picked it up in his crayfish, and then I picked it up in this wine. And I made this wine and I thought, I have to bottle this. But I can't give it, I can't put on the front label. I can't put Colombard because I'm going to be the only one drinking this. Nobody's going to buy this. And I'm going to do that white blend thing all over again. So I thought, you know what, it's time to give these wines a name and a personality. And I thought Langpad, because when you go back in history, Colombard is the first planted white grape in South Africa. So we've got a 320-year history with Colombard. For 320 years, we've abused it and misused it. And then I thought the grapes is my grapes that comes the farthest away from me. It's 4.5 hours from here. In cool trucks, it comes down. And the worst was I bottled this. We were really excited with this Langpad story and small at the back Colombard. And we gave a test to a couple of people and everybody was crazy about this wine. It's like, oh, should I hope they don't turn the bottle around to see it's Colombard. But we did it in blind tastings as well. Everybody loved it. And then we launched it at 2 weeks after we've launched it, COVID hit. And I knew, okay, I'm going to be the only one drinking this wine. Nobody's going to buy this. And it's the weirdest thing. It went to England, and I sent a few samples to Greg and them to taste, to see how they react. And somebody tasted it there and gave it to Decanter. And that year, 2 years ago, where are we now? 2020, yeah. It got voted as one of the top 50 white wines in the world. And I thought, if these people only knew where Vredendal was, and if they only knew what Colombard was, I think they would take this out of the category again. And then the beautiful thing was nobody knew what was Colombard, because people would always say, I've never tasted Colombard. And I go, yes, you have. Brandy. It's 100% brandy. And then in the UK, people started writing about it. They went ballistic and they went, wow, we've never tasted a Colombard. We didn't know it exists, blah, blah, blah. It tastes like a top-end Assertico. And it's like, yes, yes, yes. Okay, sold. And then I thought, I'm not going to plant Assertico if we have all these Colombard in South Africa. And what was beautiful is, I mean, contradictory what I just said, I don't do stickers and I don't do all those things. They made me do it. And I will do it. For Colombard, I would put a 5-star sticker on there everywhere because I need this category to grow. Because we sit with miles and miles of Colombard in South Africa, old vines that goes to co-ops and to brand. And I just want this younger crowd to see, because they still see bling and stickertjes and awards. They're going to see this 5 stars and go, okay, then I'm also going to be a Colombard maker. And that's all I wanted to do. So for me, it is just the depth of that wine is crazy.
Is this the wine that won Wine of the Year in South Africa?
Yes. So you've got, what vintage do you have?
The 2021.
20 got the top 50, yeah. So, no, the 20 got that, yeah. The 20 got white wine of the year, but then again in its category, not in all over.
In the category of Colombard, where there was just one.
Of Colombard, yeah, which I didn't have too much competition.
Got 5 stars.
It's 5 stars and it works.
So I've had the luxury of tasting this, and you know, this is the Colombard. If you really want to, I think, Ian, if we talk about your wines, we don't have them in the pack. If anyone who ever bought those packs, Ian's known for his Chenin Blanc. I mean, he makes most of that's where I met Ian at the Chenin Blanc tasting. Absolutely insane Chenin. And it's all old vine and Russell Kruger and Andre Morgenthau and whoever's involved with that. But we've got, so Cinsault is another grape. It's a bit like, it's more fancy than Colombard because it's become in vogue. That's the grape they blended with Pinot Noir to make Pinotage, and now it's the new thing, and people are making a lot of Cinsault. I did a tasting of Cinsault 3 or 4 years ago, maybe, 3, 4, and I took all the single variety Cinsaults, maybe some with a few blends, and we tasted, I think, 4 flights of 3, and most of them were cherry pops. They were very one-dimensional, very simple. And this was coming from winemakers that were reputed. The wines were good. It just was what Cinsault gave. But there were 2 that stood out. It was, and I told you this, it was your Naude and it was the Geronimo that had a structure and it had something different. Anyway, Oupa Willem is Cinsault. It's called the heritage blend because back in the 80s, they would be blending Cab and Cinsault for whatever reason, but actually, as it turns out, those wines really could age forever. But tell us about Oupa Willem. Tell us about his story and who he was, because I understand that you never met him, but he's your Oupa. And then also tell us about this heritage blend and why is it heritage? I know we're running out of time, but I just want to keep it going just for a little bit.
How long, quickly, just give me how much time do I have left?
Until people start clicking off.
Okay. I can't see them, so I don't worry. Listen, Cinsault was the first kind of very controversial one I made. I also found this block, blah, 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 same as Colombard. And it was, I mean, if Colombard had a bad name, Cinsault had the worst name. I mean, and I always say to people, Tassenberg and Kellerprins and everybody that I don't see there, first got drunk on Kellerprins and Tassenberg for the first time. And I mean, it's the worst wine ever, ever, ever. And I just thought, but that's Cinsault, because that's what Cinsault gives you. And then I found this block in Darling and I was blown away. And I thought, I have to make Cinsault. And even if I don't sell anything in South Africa, I would sell everything abroad, because this is the closest thing to a Southern French style of wine. But it's a lighter style, but it's incredibly classic. And it's got all this depth and layers, but also just misused for many years. And I wanted to make this wine, and now it's a huge category, and it's a very sexy wine, and everybody's making Cinsault. And I'm happy with that, because I mean, again, like Colombard, it's us. It's the first planted red grape again, and it's one of the parents of Pinotage. So I made this wine, and I honestly, in the beginning, nobody wanted it, because people thought, you know, South Africans thought a red wine had to be big and heavy and 14% alcohol, and I did the opposite with this wine, where it's 11-12% alcohol, but it's a lighter style. It's almost more Pinot Noirish, that people understood, and now they understand it. And I could never understand, we're a summer country, but we're drinking this big, heavy, almost chewy red wines. Why? In summer, why don't we use what we've got, chill them, and have a phenomenal red wine for summer and during the year, which is 9 months of the year. These wines also went to England, and people loved it, because I mean, it's close to the style of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, who makes a lot of Cinsaults and Grenaches as well. And what was brilliant is people started picking up there, and then people in South Africa started buying Cinsault, and the whole story. So I was lucky enough. There's a top-end guy who lives in Camps Bay, in Moeroggebied, and he buys a lot of my wines. And he phoned me and said, please come to my house. He bought a lot of wines, and I thought, I'll go and deliver it. And he said, listen, I need your help. I really need to taste. I've got all these wines from old vines that are old wines that I don't like anymore, because they're too big. I've tried. It's not my style anymore. So I went to his house, and he opened this massive wine cellar, and there was South African wines, all of them, and they were all about, I would say, the oldest one was about 1959, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, and I was stunned. I've never seen these wines, and they were all Calibrans and Alto and all these famous names from way back. And I looked at it, and I was stunned, and he said, let's try a few bottles, because I want to get rid of these wines. I don't drink these wines anymore. It's like, I'm your man, let's taste. And we pulled these wines, and they were incredibly good wines. And I thought, where did we go wrong? Because if we stayed on that path, we would have been Bordeaux by now. We would have had who we were, what our style was, and everything. But the funniest thing was, I didn't know anything about these wines, and they would all say Stellenrijk Cabernet Sauvignon, 1963. And I would taste this, and I go, wow, Cabernet has changed a lot. And then I found out that in those years, 80% of that was Cinsault and 20% was Cab. But they put Cab on there because Cab was selling and not Cinsault. So most of those old wines, the label was totally wrong. And I didn't know the percentage. I just knew it wasn't Cabernet. And then I phoned somebody who did a thesis on that, and he said, no, most of the wines are, in some of those wines, there could be 5% Cabernet, but the label would say Cabernet. And then I thought, you know what, that's our heritage. And I'm sitting with this phenomenal Cinsault, and I'm going to blend in some of the cabs from South Africa into this. But I'm going to, every vintage, I'm going to use the same Cinsault, but I'm going to use cab from different terroirs to also build something and not do the one thing. Again, boring. So the first one I did, the Cabernet comes from Durbanville. So it's also on the cool side, and it's also on the cold sea breezes comes in. So it was quite close. The second one I did was Hoogte, and the third one I did was Flottenberg Cabernet. So I go and look for these Cabernets, and then I blend them. And I wanted to stay true to that heritage wine that we made many years ago, which was a huge success, but now it's gone. And it was interesting. This guy who did his thesis phoned me and said, "What is your ratio?" And I said, "It's roughly about 80% Cinsault and then about 20% Cab." And he said, "Unbelievable. That was the ratio every time. It was always 80-20 or 75-25. And I thought, wow, okay. And what was beautiful, I thought, it's a heritage blend, and I really want to do something that's close to me. And I've never met my Oupa Willem, my dad's dad. And as a kid, they always said, when I grew up, people would say, "Yes, you're just like Oupa Willem." And this guy was an icon. He had that Nelson Mandela thing. When he walked in without doing anything, everybody would look at him. I always heard these phenomenal stories about Oupa Willem. And then older people would say when I was small, "Yes, you're just like Oupa Willem." And I go, "Wow." And they go, no, you've just got a bad temper, as in. It's like, oh, okay. Okay, I thought it was something else. And then the next thing would come and they would say, just like Oupa Willem, blah, blah, blah. And one day I just lost it. And I said to my aunt, which bad part of it? Because you recognize all the bad things in me. Yeah, I'm like him. And she said, "No, nobody ever told you, but this guy, his horses came first, then his dogs, and then people had to kind of scramble for a place." And I thought, that's my Oupa, that's me. It's me. This wine is called Oupa Willem. It's the best thing ever. And you know what? It's one of those things I think people always say when I hate questions like that. If you could have a dinner or a lunch with some people, famous or dead or whatever, I couldn't care. I want friends around the table. I don't want other people. But if I had to choose, I would have loved to meet him, and I would have loved to share these wines with him, because I think we are what people say, we're really close, and we've got the same way of looking. And I just thought, you know what, that's his wine, that's the story. And when I make a wine, I always try afterwards, I try to connect it to a person or a style, because when you have to explain it to people, it's difficult. And then I try to visualize a person. And it was so easy when I had this wine. I could see him. I never met him. And it's interesting because people said, you know what a bad name, because nobody in England and America understands Oupa. And it's like, well, hell, that's their problem. I don't speak French, and I still buy French wines. And Google Translate would quickly tell you what Oupa means. So for me, and it's the most interesting thing I always say to people, when you made a wine that works, is when people talk about, have you tasted the Oupa Willem? And they go, who makes Oupa Willem? And they Google it and they go, oh, it's an Naude wine. You've made it. Because then the wine is bigger than a person or the winemaker. Yeah.
But so just quickly, I thought that you would have said that the people you would have had around the table would have been your best horse and your best dog.
Oh yes, but that's a given. That's a given. But if I had to fit a person in there, it would be him.
It would be Oupa Willem. But now
it would be. Yeah.
But so we've spoken about all these people asking you to make something which is not South African, and you've pioneered making South African wines with a few others, and that's amazing. And these Cinsault, I mean, people, if you even remember what is Chateau Libertas? That was a Cinsault blend. It's different today, but back then those things. I remember my old man, and he was cousins with Ronnie Melk, who was part of Stellenbosch Farmers Winery. And my old man said, "Okay, you know about wine. You tell me what I must buy." And he said, "You must buy Chateau Libertas because it's cheap and it'll age forever." And he was right. And not the ones you buy now, which is co-op, and it hasn't got that 80-20 blend. Mm-hmm. Anyway, So I mean, you are considering your wines and considering your international acclaim. I think they are right. You are an icon, but you're an icon that, when I found out about Cinsault, I had to Google who Ian Naude was, because and it's exactly that, because it's not like everyone knows who Ian Naude is. And I think more and more quickly, and probably even in the upper, like maybe in the UK, Naude wines precede who you are as a person, because they are so well known and so famous.
Yeah, thanks.
But and I know that you're not that extrovert. You're not that guy who wants the badges. You just said it. I did let's just finish off on this, because if you were to go back now and you would be a young gun, because you pioneered, but now we've got all these young people around and they are all pioneering. They are all doing amazing stuff. Hey, how would that sit with you, going back now and starting with the likes of all these cowboys? Kelly?
Wow, that's a brilliant question. I've never had that. Firstly, I would hate it, because I think 80% are better than me, and they're going to be incredibly big winemakers one day. And I don't know if I ever would have achieved that and be on that standard, because where they now, I mean, it's incredible what they do. Secondly, I think I would have loved it because there were more people thinking the way even myself and two or other three guys, we were the weird ones. We would not be the weird ones now. Actually, I think we would be the librarians right now compared to these guys. And what I love is, I love sitting, listening to them, because I learn a lot from them, and they don't have the baggage we have from the KWV and apartheid and strikes, and we can't do this, and this is the rules. They don't care. They don't care, but not in a bad way. They just break the boundaries. And I think we were lucky enough to be the ones who start breaking those boundaries for them. But I would rather want to look back one day and say, wow, I was part of that, and not I was the guy. I was one of the guys who was starting to open the boundaries, but it's kind of sad if you open the boundaries and nobody follows up. These guys have come to the party in tenfold, and they make wines. I taste wines literally every month that people bring me and go, if you taste this, I've never heard of this guy, I've never seen this label, but it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And what I enjoy as well is the younger group. It's one of the biggest pleasures for me is to help them. And I learn from them, they learn from me, but I've been in the industry for a long time. I've got the contacts abroad where I can spot somebody and see this guy's brilliant, like Saki with the Revenge of the Crayfish. And I can phone Greg and say, taste this. And he can go literally from zero to rock star overnight. So I enjoy that, and saying that is, yeah, I would hate to work with them because I think they're a lot better than I could ever be. And secondly, I would love to work with them because I would not be the weirdo then. Yeah.
But you see, so that's the breaking the ground. And we've had quite a few people on, as you know, but I just remember on the one session with Bula Gerber, and he says that everyone thinks that the Swartland cowboys, or the cowboys that changed the world of winemaking and broke the barriers, which includes you very much, obviously, they think that they've created a category that's Swartland, and that's Ra and Shannon. But what he said is, what you don't understand is they broke the boundaries for every winemaker in the past, going forward in all the regions. And it's because of that movement and the movement you were involved in that made them get better at their winemaking, rather than just take the grapes, put Vin 7 in, make it nice, and they weren't thinking about the market. They were thinking about the instruction book that you got from KWV and Paul Elsenberg and all of that. Anyway,
Exactly.
That's where I'm going to finish on this. And so we have overrun a little bit. I'm selfish little me because I really love Ian and what he does and his philosophy and all of that. And so I'm going to end it with there. But if anyone's got any questions, I know there's not.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to if somebody have a question.
Yeah. Just unmute yourself and then ask. I can ask a whole heap.
Now everybody's quiet.
Yeah.
No, please, guys, I need a question or two, or just anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Having traveled abroad so much and done so many seasons and harvests and things like that, out of interest, what was your favorite country out of South Africa just to experience winemaking?
That's a brilliant question. It was interesting. I did a Zoom thing for a very big fancy group the other day in a Zoom tasting for guys in the UK. And they asked me, I have to give them They knew every winery I worked at, blah, blah, blah. And they asked and they said, what did you learn in France? What did you learn in Italy? What did you learn? And we got to Germany and I said, how to clean a winery brilliantly. It's very true. I would say that the place I learned the most, and I didn't expect anything. I worked for a year in Washington State in America, in a very small town called Prosser, which I mean makes Laingsburg looks like a city. And it was just cowboys, and it was a really weird place. They made incredible wines. And I think in a couple of years, they're going to be America's wine to go to, and not the Disneyland from the Napa Valley. They made honest wines. They made, it was kind of almost South African style, and it was people who didn't have all those things. And I learned a lot there. I honestly did learn. Their Cabernets, their Chardonnays, their things was just incredible. Italy, and then I would say my second one would be, yeah, I suppose France, because you hear about all these things and you taste all these phenomenal wines, but you never get into the winery where you actually see what they do. And what I loved about it was, when you have perfection, don't mess around. Do what perfection needs. And that's where I learned that it's about the vineyard and not the winemaker. Because this vineyard on that soil, this is why Bordeaux is that price, and because why Bordeaux is that good is because of the terroir. And it changed my mind, because we came from a country where you're manipulating, trying to make a Bordeaux blend or a Aussie Shiraz or a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. And I think that was the tipping point for me when I realized, wow, it's about that vineyard. And everything happens in that vineyard. We were in the vineyard 9 out of 10 days, and 1 day in the winery. So for me, yeah, those two was the biggest ones. Yeah, good question.
How many, Ian, how many more vintages have you got?
I don't know. Every year I was hoping it would be my last. Then Colombard comes, and then Cinsault comes, and then other things comes. No, many more, many more. No, the day, as long as it stays exciting for me. And the thing is, we're only starting to scratch areas and cultivars that's been here forever, and nobody has done. And that's why I say I was very, and I'm not going to say where or what cultivar. Last year I found something and I was like, really, this is it, and I'm going to make a really good thing. I actually sold it as bulk because it just didn't work. And I thought the problem was I was trying to make this wine something, and the wine didn't come to me. And I think that's the beauty, is just being part of this bigger picture and know that we could do so much more in South Africa. Because we've got this 370 years of winemaking, and it's only starting now to showcase the world that, wow, this is quality, especially with the old wines that came in. But many more.
That's amazing. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions. You can.
Ian, yeah. I just wanted to talk quickly about Colombard, because I joined Wine of the Month Club when I lived in Johannesburg about 30 years ago. And you can hear me, Harry? Yeah?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So I joined Wine of the Month Club, and they used to send us Colombard from Van Loveren, I think, estate.
Yeah. Often.
And it, as you said, had a guava taste, and I really didn't like it. So when they said to us that there was a Colombard, I was very suspicious. But I've been drinking it tonight. It's really very nice. And I can't believe that is that different from those Colombards from that time. It's fantastic. Well done.
Thank you, Graham. You know, my biggest thing was when I started making Cinsault and Colombard. I was hoping the crowd that drank the bad ones way back would not think, no, I'm not going to drink this. This is the worst one.
Same story.
And for me, it was such a big thing. That's why I gave these things names. That's why I gave the Cinsault Werf dance, which is a brilliant name for that area, and Colombard Langpad, because I knew I had to catch that older crowd that drank that guava bombs that Van Looferen made. It was the worst ones, and that's why when they said we've got Colombard here, the first thing was no, I don't want to touch this. And when they said Cinsault again, it was like no, why would I make a Chateau Libertas, horrible wine? And what is interesting is when I've tried to find out, because I actually went to buy some of those bottles, they can make phenomenal Cinsault Colombards from there. They pick way too ripe. They go for over extraction, and they put yeast in there, like Vincebener things to get this. And I've actually thought I can't. Yeah, there's certain people you don't want to worry too much about, but I've actually sent them a bottle and said, just taste this. You don't have to say anything, just taste this, because this is what nature is doing, and this is what you are doing. And you're not helping Colombard here. So I've got a few young winemakers that I'm helping this year to make Colombard as natural as possible from different terroirs, because I want to showcase to people it's not just this one. It's from all over. Forget those guava bombs. Because they are horrible. They're horrible.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you found one that you could drink now.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Werf dance, if I understand it correctly, is that little dance that the dust makes when you've got like the wind blowing.
Yeah, you know, it's a beautiful name because Cinsault as well, we had to give it a name. Darling is wheat farming, so it's beautiful in the winter. It's all these green fields, and then it's got actually two sides, because when the wind blows, it's like waves going through that area. It's beautiful, and then in the summer, the weeds cut, and it's just dry land. It's horrible. It's yellow and it's dusty, and then the wind blows a lot, and you get these little whirlwinds. And the colours always call it the stofduiveltjies, which means the dust devils. And they would say, the devils are dancing again today, when all these small little whirlwinds. And I just thought, what a beautiful name for this area, because in the summer, it's these wheat fields that just dances. And in the summer again, it's this little dust devils that dances everywhere. And I thought, I want people to understand where the wine comes from, and Werf dance for me is this yard. This farm is dancing in both seasons, but in different ways, But thanks for your time, and thanks for organizing this, Harry. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and really, like, I can't wait to see you again. And yeah, I mean, I've tasted now your Shannons, I've tasted Oupa, I've tasted the Colombard. I'm blown away. I think it's amazing. And thank you.
Thank you. Keep well, guys. Bye-bye.